So in this video, we're actually going to be talking about what the best major is for entrepreneurship or people who intend on pursuing entrepreneurial ventures after they graduate from either their undergraduate degree or their graduate degree as well. For those of you who have already been doing some research, there's a lot of different resources online that'll give you their opinions on what they feel the best major is, whether it's business or engineering or science. There's also a very popular opinion online that students should forego university and college altogether and should go right into entrepreneurship. I'm actually going to advise against that sentiment. I'm going to go into specific details why. But regardless, hopefully this video will provide you with some context and make you really introspective about your decisions and what you actually want to pursue so you can make more informed decisions later on. Now, one of the reasons why I actually advise people to go to college, even if they want to pursue entrepreneurship, is for a very simple reason. When you decide on whether or not you want to go into college or what you actually want to do in your career, or just pursue at least for now until you have a better understanding of the full landscape, is that you're actually going to be in your late teens. And so in your late teens, it's probably going to be very attractive to look at entrepreneurship as a viable career, particularly because of a lot of the financial rewards that can come from that, the lifestyle rewards that can come from that, but also just the allure and the glamour that just happens to be surrounding entrepreneurship in 2017. One of the things that you'll probably not hear a lot of people talk about is really how much work and how much rigor actually goes into being an entrepreneur. And you might hear that from time to time, and it just might be people who feel like they're being placated and that these are just the standard things that adults are telling them for them to be more cautious about the decisions that they're making. But people who've already tried entrepreneurship can attest to this. But the art almost of being an entrepreneur is something that just everyone isn't built for. And that's something that's very important to really recognize. I don't think in your late teens you're going to be equipped to know whether or not you're actually cut out to be an entrepreneur. And so one of the challenges with going right into it at that age is just the risks of coming out of that at 22 years old or 23 years old, realizing that, hey, I'm not really cut out for this. I'm cut out to be maybe an employee. And that's not to say that you can't have entrepreneurial tendencies and that maybe you can't start a small business on the side, or maybe you can be a freelance consultant, or do some other things that relate to entrepreneurship. But you just might realize that this isn't the life that you initially thought it was going to be. It's a lot more rigorous than you initially thought it was going to be. And you just don't have the skills necessary to be as successful as you would have hoped to be. I also fear that at that age, people are not going to be willing to go back to school based off of the fact that they're going to be a lot older. Maybe they're looking to settle down and start a family. And so they're just at a different stage in their career at that point. And so for that reason alone, I think that it's very important for people to at least pursue or look at the college route. Now, with that said, I think that people need to be very mindful of the fact that they're looking to go into entrepreneurship at the end of graduation, and they should be making their college selection choices based off of this. They shouldn't necessarily pay attention to all the fancy brand names or all the private schools that are going to equip them with a bunch of different debt payments that are actually going to force them out of entrepreneurship. I think they should be very mindful of the types of skills that they feel like they're going to need in order in and actually build up in order to be successful in entrepreneurship. I actually think that school will provide them with a good solid foundation. I also think that if they happen to start with college or university and happen to leave to pursue entrepreneurial ventures, coming back to that at a later time won't necessarily be as daunting as doing the full 4 years in their mid 20s, which would take you to about 30 years old before you actually hit the job market as an entry level employee. So for that reason, if you are looking at pursuing a degree, we've already made the distinction that, for some people it might be the case. For some other people, they might feel as though they're already halfway there. They've been pursuing business ventures their entire life, or maybe they want to go to a more specialized school and not do the traditional 4 year route and, maybe be a designer, or maybe learn a specific skill and join a company and learn a bunch of things there and do that for 4 years and then start your own company after that. Those are all forms of education. I just don't think people should be making that decision on what they're going to do for the next 40 years and tying themselves to that, and potentially delaying their own development if they're making a wrong move. So I'm very much a fan of the strategy of diversifying, just so that you have You have the background and the pedigree that you're going to need to be successful in the long run. For that reason, I'm not at all opposed to looking at part-time options as well too. If you're extremely sure that you want to go the entrepreneurial route, there's nothing stopping you from taking a couple courses a week that'll actually complement this in a lot of ways. It'll provide you with a couple different perspectives, and honestly, there's a lot of resources on campus, whether you're talking about certain professors or clubs, that'll actually help drive the business forward. It's also a great opportunity for you to find other people who can perhaps join your business, or who you can recruit to form partnerships with. So I think there's a lot of value in actually looking at the educational landscape as a forms as a means of actually driving this goal forward. So I wouldn't overlook it in that regard either. But if we're looking at specific majors, I would say a lot of this actually has to do, well, a lot of this really depends on the type of entrepreneurship you want to pursue. So a lot of people will think, okay, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, so I'm just going to major in entrepreneurship. Can you learn some valuable things there? Sure. I mean, there might be some small business management type of courses. There might be some leadership type of courses, recruiting type of courses, and just essentially courses that'll teach you the fundamentals that you'll probably need to know when running a business. But more important than that, I really think it's important for people to be introspective of what type of business they're actually looking to start. So, for example, if you have the intention of working in the biotechnology sector, whether it be as an entrepreneur or whether it be with a company, I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with pursuing biotechnology as a degree, if only to help you better understand the industry as a whole, better understand what you're going to need out of your key hires, what you're going to need in terms of product development, and just to essentially build out your skill set and the value that you provide to your organization eventually. Also, the other thing too is if you realize in a couple years that just entrepreneurship just isn't for you, you have the pedigree to actually go into another company, perhaps as an intrapreneur, maybe a startup or something, and just be a key person there to drive that business forward and to be an intrapreneur in that specific company for them. So there's an opportunity there. I think that if some people want to go into medical practices and just they want to improve the medical field in general. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with having a medical background. I think it'll provide you with a certain fundamental set of knowledge and skills that'll again help you develop your pedigree before you decide to pursue that as a career. For all you know, you might take a few courses in that and say, you know what, this is a lot more boring than I thought it was going to be. I actually don't like this. Another thing to consider is being a doctor in and of itself. Maybe you'll open up your own clinic. That's a business in and of itself. And so you might not view that as the traditional sense of being an entrepreneur, but in a lot of ways, you're providing medical services. It actually very much is entrepreneurial. So there isn't necessarily anything wrong with having that background and having that education to fall back on. I do think that with the educational landscape being the way it is today, we have a lot more flexible options. Um, to pursue that and to help you do other things as you're pursuing um, your own entrepreneurial ventures. Also, with the internet, it makes it super accessible to not only take courses online, but to be pursuing your business online, maybe collaborating with people across the country and other universities, meeting with key people from across the country and that type of thing. And so there's a lot more resources and opportunities now than there would have been 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I definitely urge people to take advantage of that. One thing I want to note is I mentioned if you know biotechnology or going into the medical devices, maybe you want to start a type of company in the oil and gas sector, and so having a background in petroleum engineering is going to be great. Or maybe you want to start a tech company and having a degree in computer science would be great because even if that doesn't work out, then you can join a startup as an engineer, maybe take some equity in that specific company, and you can be one of the co-founders or early key people in that specific field. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And I think that as a 16, 17, 18-year old, a lot of people don't like that as much as being the person, being the CEO, being the founder. And I understand that there's a certain allure to that and there's a certain fetishism that comes along with that. That's great and everything. But again, when you're 27, 28, 29, you've been in the field for a few years, you actually realize where your true talents actually lie and what you're best suited to pursue. And so that's why I do think the education isn't necessarily something that can be perceived as a bad thing. Again, this isn't to recommend any one degree over the other. I would always highly recommend people to identify first what industry they think they want to be an entrepreneur in order to help them make the most informed decisions. A lot of people will automatically look at business and say, "Oh, I'm just going to be an entrepreneur, so I just need a business degree." This will teach you some fundamental skills, but I think what you need to do first is you need to develop an idea of what your key value is going to be in the business. So, for example, even if you happen to be a co-founder, in a lot of cases, you're going to have a lot of other co-founders working with you. And what will usually happen is each of the co-founders will have their own specialization, or they'll take care of a key area of the business. So, for example, you might have a series of co-founders, one of which is the head of product, they're the CTO or something. If it's specifically if it's a tech company, they might be the head of product or the head of engineering, that type of thing. You might have another co-founder who's dealing with a lot of the legal work. You might have another co-founder who's the CFO, who's dealing with a lot of the financial aspects of running the actual business as well too. So there isn't anything wrong with just identifying, maybe I don't have specialized knowledge in biotechnology. I just want to be an entrepreneur. I want to work alongside with entrepreneurs and I enjoy accounting. So maybe I'll pursue an accounting degree and I can still start my own business, maybe an accounting business and have that be my entrepreneurial venture. Or maybe I'll partner up with somebody who's a computer science major and we'll start the next tech startup and I'll be the co-founder and they'll be the co-founder. They'll work on product and I'll work on the financial aspect of it and I'll help make the informed decisions based off of what the product should and shouldn't have. Or maybe, I want to be in an entrepreneurial environment and I like recruiting and I'll take on the HR role and I'll manage a lot of the people there too. So with that said, I think that there's a lot of value that college can provide. And I really hate this idea of you should go or you shouldn't go, because I think with the technologies available these days and with the resources available these days, there are so many different options open to people. And I think that they're really overlooking it just because they think that it has to be one or the other. I really don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with pursuing both, or at least pursuing a degree now and determining for sure what it is that you actually want to pursue as a career. And if that doesn't work out, you at least have something that you can kind of fall back on. Again, the biggest thing, and I mentioned this earlier, but it's worth mentioning again because it's a massive point. I really discourage people who intend on pursuing entrepreneurship from taking on a bunch of debt that is going to tie them to a career that is not entrepreneurship. I think that it's great if you can get into a target school. It's awesome. I'm sure you'll meet some great people. I'm sure you'll it might even drive the business forward in a lot of ways. But if that means you're going to take on hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, you're going to put all that pressure on yourself. When you graduate, if you think you're going to have a year or two to pursue your business, you're probably going to have to think again because your interest payments are going to start accumulating. Your bill payments are going to start accumulating. You're going to have a lot of other responsibilities that are going to take your attention away from the business that you're actually trying to build. So, with that said, I can't encourage people enough to just really do your research, to be introspective, understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you want to develop, and what you actually want to spend your life doing. There's no right or wrong answer to this, and no one video or no one book and no one tagline online is actually going to determine your future. You're the only person who can do that. So be introspective, be open-minded, pursue a bunch of different things, and keep your options open. So thank you again for watching this video. If you have any other questions, please leave it in the comment section below. Check out some of my other videos. And as always, thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the next one.